NECA Animated TMNT Which Figures Do We Want? Part 6. Top 60 that were never in the original cartoon. We're looking for a few good, never before made in the original animation style mutants. Hi everybody, welcome to SpeekyGeeky. As always, I am Mr. Geeky. Today, we are going to be discussing NECA's Fred Wolf 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon toy line, though in a much more expanded way. If you've already tuned in for parts 1 through 5 of this series, congrats on being all caught up, and also a massive turtle-sized 3-finger pat on the back for taking the time to check those out. If you haven't, well, we got you covered, and we'll go ahead and plop in a link for part 1 for you right here. Or you can watch on through to the end, where we'll conveniently add the channel series as well. Well, it's a new year, and that means a brand new Which Figures Do We Want series. If you can believe it, our last NECA-facing episode was all the way back in December of 2021. Since then, we were gearing up to put out our official part 6 for the Fred Wolf line episode, as well as an additional spin-off series that would have imagined Archie and additional TMNT iterations that NECA hadn't indicated were coming yet. But then, boom! February's ToyFair happened, and holy guacamole, we feel like a character directly out of the 80s even saying this, but ToyFair, whoa! Well, it certainly threw our episode plans for a curveball. What it absolutely did not do was disappoint. Why geeky, you might ask? What was so special about this year's ToyFair? Oh, you know, it only had some of the coolest possible reveals we've seen from NECA thus far. Each time we thought they were done, bam, another hit, and then, shell shock, another. If this was a Retro Turtles video game, this would have been the part of the level where we would have been looking high and low for a pizza, because with how fast and furious those reveals were coming at us, all our energy was quickly drained from jumping up and down with excitement. For those that have been living under a rock for the last couple of months, here's a quick recap in a section we like to call SpeekyGeeky's Nerd Out Moment. First up was the last Ronin. Wait, how? What? Huh? But isn't that IDW? Did that mean NECA now has the rights to do IDW characters? We, and we're sure many of those watching this also immediately asked themselves out loud, though it hasn't been officially confirmed yet that the license extends towards additional IDW characters, it certainly would seem that those are now on the table as well. It's safe to assume that we at SpeekyGeeky are already hard at work on putting a list of our top hopes together of who we would like to see from IDW. Is what we'd say if we hadn't already put out a video on specifically that last year, one that absolutely has only aged better with time. And we'll just plop the link to that video right here and at the end of the episode for you, in case you might want to keep the turtle deep dive going once you finish here. But how does one top a heavy-hitting reveal like IDW's uber-popular Last Ronin? Well, keen observers might note that 2 of the characters that made it onto this video you are watching right now were actually part of that up in the ante reveal by those imagination magicians over at NECA with their brand new Archie Comics facing TMNT Adventures toy line. Once we started putting our head back together from our immediate explosion of delight, we took a moment to take in what this actually meant and to consider who we might want from that line. And then we remembered, oh, didn't we make a video for that too? Why, yes, it appears we did. And boom, here's the link for that Archie TMNT video that dives into a couple of our top picks as well. And yes, indeed, a handful of our spotlighted characters did in fact make the initial NECA cut. It's almost as if NECA had been watching our video and hearing our geeky pleas. We are, of course, talking about the gorgeous Ken Mitroni art versions of the missing 2 members of the Mutanimals, Jagwar and Dreadmon. Not to worry, as we noted, we'll dig into those in a bit, but because those 2 were already revealed, we'll just go ahead and add in a couple of bonus options for this episode. And all you have to do is ignore that we're still going to talk about wanting Jagwar and Dreadmon, because hey, technically, we still don't have them in that Fred Wolf specific style. And who are we to quibble about having multiple versions of characters who have been a noticeable hole in our collection for over 30 years? And if that wasn't enough, in that same reveal, we were also treated to a gorgeous looking TMNT Adventures Slash, Ray Fillet, and first time in plastic desired character, Bubla the Glublub. Try saying that 10 times fast. Or even 1 time fast for that matter. You would think that covered everything, right? But nope! NECA also revealed an onslaught of new Mirage Comics styled characters. The first of those new reveals, Fugitoid, was just released through the recent Target Haulathon event. Each figure features original art by Kevin Eastman on the packaging. Fugitoid on his own would have been enough, but we were also treated to first glimpses of Renet, along with Lord Simultaneous, Ultram Soldier, also with battle damage head, and a tease for Casey Jones. We'd like to say that we also have an accompanying video for Mirage too. But that said, throughout this new series, there is a very good chance we'll see some Mirage characters sprinkled throughout as well. Who knows? Maybe even in this very installment. Last but not least in any regard was the Fred Wolf updates. We saw reveals of a handful of characters we had discussed in previous episodes of Which Figures Do We Want, like Smash, Zack the Fifth Turtle, and a final version of Usagi Yojimbo, plus the Rock Soldiers Infantrymen, Crooked Turtle Gang Goons, more images of the Neutrinos, and Toon Toka and Razar. Oh, and in a very special Fooshcast with NECA TMNT brand manager Trevor Zammit, we also saw in a tease that both a turtle van and a sewer lair diorama might be coming soon. And then, just as we thought we had seen all there was to see from ToyFair, flying under the radar immediately afterward, seemingly out of nowhere, boom! Robotic, Bebop and Rocksteady, and glow-in-the-dark Muckman and Joe Eyeball started turning up on toy shelves as part of the Haulathon event. There, are we done? That was quite a bit of reveals. It must be done, right? Oh, it's not done? We didn't touch on Universal Monster Turtles? Okay, so speed round here. But just know, we were over the moon with these reveals as well. And if we could go on forever talking about them, we most certainly would. On the Universal Monsters front, we saw brand new images of Mummy Mike, complete with a hieroglyphics shell, a still in-shadow tease for Judith Hogg likeness Bride of Frankenstein, and what appears to potentially be a Shredder or Mondo Gecko Van Helsing. Okay, with those enormous updates out of the way, we might as well just dive right in before Mr. Geeky loses his voice from talking too much. Just to clarify right out the gate, we know there are way more than 8 figures who didn't actually appear in the 1987 Fred Wolf cartoon series that everyone would like to see NECA incorporate into the animated facing toy line, us included. So please note, this is just part 1 of a multi-part series for this particular topic. That said, we'd love for fans to weigh in on who would make their top 8 in the comments below. Who knows? Some of your choices may end up making one of the upcoming lists as well. Let's see who we're talking about here. Essentially, what we're proposing is almost a what-if scenario, where characters from every other iteration of TMNT that did not appear in the actual original cartoon series could be made in the original Fred Wolf series style. And yes, that could also include characters who made guest appearances in various comics or later cartoon series like Flaming Carrot, Cerebus, Savage Dragon, and other various image-facing characters, Gizmo, Fugitoid, and many, many others. After all, we did get a Usagi Yojimbo in the cartoon and original toy line, and likely almost a Panda Con. So why would we stop there? For the sake of these being wholly unique choices, at least for now, we'll take explicit variants of the Turtles proper off the table. But there's a very good chance we may have something cooked up to focus on those as well. Because who among us wouldn't appreciate intergalactic wrestling versions of the brothers, or the Unmentionables, or Super Turtles? Or, well, you get where we're going with this. There's a lot. Enough so that it could, should, and likely would warrant its own list. For this list, however, we'll be looking at characters from other iterations that we are hoping to see in the 1987 Fred Wolf style. It's a long shot, but who knows? If enough of us voice enough demand, well, that can often speak volumes. In no particular order, and without further ado, let's jump into the top 60 NECA classic cartoon figures we hope to someday see in the classic cartoon series style. Part 1, number 8. Jagwar. Originally appearing in Archie Comics TMNT Adventures, Jagwar seemed 100% in line with the type of figure we would come to expect from the Playmates toy line. But in his case, it just never came. Jaguar falls into the category of never-before-made figure from the ill-fated first incarnation of the Mighty Mutanimals that is sorely missing from our toy shelf and vastly overdue. Pointing out the obvious here, that this character had not one, but 2 miniseries, plus multiple crossovers with the primary Archie TMNT series, that this figure was one of 2 original Mutanimals that never saw light of day, other than the incredible figure from DeFoot Toys in Playmates style. And this was a long-lasting point of frustration for many TMNT completists. Though NECA has now revealed that they will be releasing a Jagwar and Dreadmon through their Archie line, if they were ever to start creating figures from those other iterations in the official Fred Wolf style, he would fit in seamlessly due to Michael Dooney's attempt to match the look and feel of the 1987 cartoon that the Archie series ran adjacent to. Looking back on the Fred Wolf cartoon, however, he is exactly the type of character that the Turtles would see themselves running into on any one of their globe-hopping adventures. And frankly, we are shocked we didn't see that occur in between seasons 4 and 5, where they went to every corner of the planet, even leagues under it, to journey to the lost city of Atlantis. Jagwar is another one of those non-traditional anthropomorphs. Hailing from the Amazon rainforest, he found his mutation in a very different way than the turtles. In fact, if we want to get technical about it, he isn't actually a mutant, but rather a half-human, half-jaguar demigod. Jagwar is a mutant in the same way that X-Men's Phoenix, while it inhabits Jean Grey, is a mutant. While it technically is true, it's slightly disingenuous in that it sells the full scope of his powers short. Jagwar was actually set to be immortalized in plastic around 2008, around the time of the CGI movie, which had nothing to do with the figure, but seemed like perhaps the new Global Mutant Missions line was meant to capitalize on the new TMNT property's hopeful theatrical success. Despite the seemingly out-of-place timing, this still would have been an incredible and welcome addition, despite only marginally looking like his comic depiction. But ultimately, this figure, along with the rest of this line, which was expected to also include a mutant Komodo dragon, gorilla, and Tasmanian devil, though prototypes make it somewhat more clear that the Tasmanian devil was actually meant to be Dreadmon, was, for unknown reasons, left on the cutting room floor. If we had our druthers, we'd see the rest of this never-realized Global Mutant Missions line as well. But we suppose we'll be okay with just Archie version Jagwar and Dreadmon for now. For now. Number 7. Pizzaface. Though Pizzaface never made it into the Fred Wolf series, we did have him as a figure from the original Playmates line, and it was a doozy. Pizzaface is one of those characters that was over the top even for TMNT standards, which we mean in the very best way possible. He was a villain where you didn't even need to know too much of his backstory, but you knew the last thing you ever wanted was to be trapped in a room with him, unless you were trapped in a room with his toy form. Of course. Many folks who had the original Playmates figure may recall the toy featured a buzzsaw and pizza box combo as a makeshift peg leg, along with the ability to swap it with a meat cleaver. But why he would need either to make pizza? Come on, Geeky, you're overthinking this as usual. As time went on, we learned more about some of the changes that were made to the character before the final version we saw in toy form, and what was discovered only added fuel to just how wacky this character was intended to be. For starters, some of the accessories that were meant to come with the character were deliciously bonkers, including a concrete and throwing saw pizza, along with a belt that was ultimately nixed, that was made out of turtle skin and even had a tiny turtle hanging off of it for dear life. Many folks are now fairly familiar with the original Archowski art head Pizzaface was meant to come with, that would have included an additional tiny head, which likely had the name Pepperoni, but some of the other concepts illustrated him in equally outlandish depictions, including one where his face actually resembles a mutant pizza. Technically, we saw Pizzaface reappear not once, but twice in the cartoons, looking very different in the 2012 cartoon in a bit of a hybrid look between the early Pizza Mutant concept and another early Muckman concept named Dump. But then again, in Rise of TMNT, in a version different enough to say it was a completely different character, but yet still reminiscent enough to give it a second glance once called out, in the form of Alberto, the animatronic chef bear gone awry that was obviously an additional nod to Five Nights at Freddy's. And also likely the Banana Splits. This is a character that seems a fairly easy transition to the Fred Wolf style. This is the same series, after all, that had literal pizza mutants that hunted the turtles through the sewers, and whose main villain was based on a cheese grater. So, a disgruntled pizza man determined to hunt and eat turtles doesn't seem too far outside of their wheelhouse. The Fred Wolf-style Pizzaface would absolutely need to come with a removable hat that would reveal his tiny twin affixed to his head, Ratatouille style, as well as an additional head that reflected the Pizza Mutant-esque concept version. We loved the idea of being able to swap his leg for various additional objects, including a plunger, a large pizza cutter that could double as a wheel, and a cleaver for starters. We're not saying this figure needs to come extra fast, but just remember, if it takes longer than 30 minutes, it's free. Number 6. Dreadmon. Dreadmon is yet another option from our Which Archie Figures Do We Want video, which, if you haven't seen it yet, we'll plop the link right here. If you have, well, then you know how we feel, and we're pretty much going to rehash it here to hammer in our vast array of reasons why this character is one of our favorites and incredibly needed in a variety of forms. If you haven't watched that video yet, we highly suggest you check it out, as there are some other incredible additional options there like Belly Bomb, Manx, Craniac, Crying Hound, and Ninjara, who very much should and likely will make it onto this list eventually as well. From the moment Dreadmon stepped onto the TMNT scene and subsequently into the ill-fated roster of the original incarnation of the Mighty Mutanimals, we knew we had to have him as an action figure, and surely we would. right? After all, Wingnut, Screwloose, Leatherhead, Mondo Gecko, and Ray Fillet all got Playmates figures. Even Jagwar got a figure. Well, at the time, at least in prototype form. So we were certain we'd have Dreadmon, but he never came, and we were devastated. How could we say we had a full roster of the Mighty Mutanimals if 2 of its primary members were missing? So our point is, some of us have waited over 30 years to finally complete this original Mutanimals roster. And since Archie is finally on the table, Old Reddy needs to get the love he duly deserves, not just in that form, but in every form we could possibly get him. And yes, even in forms we have never seen him, like Fred Wolf. Now that we got our soapbox plea in, a little background for those just learning about Dreadmon for the very first time. This South African Jamaican native red fox / Tasmanian devil found his way to mutantdom in a quite different manner than the turtles, gaining his mutation from an ancient talisman that also imbued him with super speed. Dreadmon and the other original Mutanimals often teamed with the turtles in the Archie series and in their own spin-off Mighty Mutanimals series to combat various social, economic, and ecology-facing issues, which eventually led to yet another incredibly fun mutant group called the Conservation Corps. But that is a conversation for a little further down the road in this series. Number 5. Venus de Milo. Despite the often slapsticky nature of the Next Mutation series, there were plenty of highlights from that series that many of us have grown a bit more fond of with the benefit of time. And also for many of us, Venus very much tops that list. Regardless of the folks who are quick to note that this iteration of the Turtles is their least favorite of the franchise, Venus herself, through the years, has fostered and maintained a pretty healthy fan base. We at SpeekyGeeky are also of the belief that even though the live-action series perhaps rubbed some folks the wrong way, the series itself did produce some incredibly cool characters into the Turtleverse, and those absolutely should warrant another look within a new setting. Venus always seemed a natural for that consideration, and it looks as if that is finally getting a bit of traction with the new IDW teases that she will be returning, at least in comic book form, that is. Expanding on this notion, we would also lump Dr. Cornelius Quees, who kinda sorta seems to be based on Dr. Victor Farrell from Palladium's early TMNT predecessor role-playing game, TMNT and Other Strangeness. Clearly, Quees is his own character in Next Mutation from what we saw, but who knows? Maybe if the series had continued to a season 2, we would have finally been treated to his assistant, Igor, as well. And don't even get us started on Silver. Well, at least not yet, as we'd only be getting ahead of ourselves. And anyhow, we're not talking about Quees or Silver here. Right now, it's all about the love for DeMilo. Though IDW had introduced another female turtle a while back named Jenica, as we mentioned in our Which IDW TMNT Figures Do We Want video from last year, other than both DeMilo and Jenica's non-familial status to the 4 brothers, these 2 female turtles' origins are starkly different from one another. In the Next Mutation series, there were actually 5 turtles that fell into the ooze. DeMilo was one of those turtles, but was separated from the other 4 at the point of mutation, and was raised in Chinatown, completely unaware of the rest of the turtles, only becoming aware of the other turtles' existence upon the death of her father figure, Chung-E. We have a lot of lingering questions with that relationship, like why he would choose not to divulge that there were others like herself. If Splinter had known all this time about her existence, why would he make a conscious effort to keep her from meeting others like herself? And how the turtles were all considered brothers, but for some reason the only other turtle that was with them wasn't a relative? But these are all questions that may have a brand new opportunity to be answered, or at least adjusted, if DeMilo were ever to be given brand new plastic life in the Fred Wolf line. Until then, these decades-old loose plot points might just have to stay dangling. Number 4. Kirby, the 5th turtle. Whoa, geeky. Kirby? Don't we mean Zack? Or Slash? Or Venus? Or for those Archie fans out there, Turtle April? Well, we absolutely count all of the above. But Kirby was the official 5th turtle in the live-action film that never ended up happening. Named after the esteemed comic artist Jack Kirby, who both Eastman and Laird had a great affinity and respect for, Kirby saw quite a few iterations that were all incredibly different from one another. In one, he appeared with dreadlocks. In another, a swashbuckling swordsman. In another, he resembled both Slash and Toka. And there was even one where he looked like more of a frog than an actual turtle. After the 3rd TMNT film didn't meet box office expectations, the 4th film, which would have seen a future-flung Turtles going through some second mutations and dealing with some brand new tech-inspired baddies, including what appeared to be an evil April and Casey Jones. So evil, in fact, that his name is now spelled with a K rather than a C. And yes, the long-awaited return of the Shredder, which we can only assume this time around, considering the state he was left in, to have been some sort of mutant cyber zombie hybrid. Splinter also would have seen some new changes that would have allowed for him to move from the wise sage role to one where he could more directly join in on the fighting. We can have countless conversations on whether this would have been a good film or not at the time. And honestly, we probably should, with a modern day lens, in terms of at least considering something like this with current day capabilities and special effects. But we've gone on a tangent now, and we want to stay focused here on the selection of Kirby. Some story elements eventually made their way into the various iterations of the Turtles. For instance, we did see the cartoon Turtles have a second mutation in the Fred Wolf series. The name of the fourth movie, which was tentatively called The Next Mutation, also made its way into canon with the subsequent live-action series. And in the 2012 series, we also saw a zombified Shredder in addition to April turning to the dark side for a bit. But still, other than the name of April's dad in that series, a Mr. Kirby O'Neill, who, by the way, was very much not a turtle, we still never saw a definitive Kirby. Though, it should be noted that Kirby was recently designed to potentially appear in the IDW comic as part of Lita's future. Ultimately, that character did not appear, and for now, the role of that character within that series remains a mystery. There is some speculation that Kirby was meant to be the fifth turtle in the Next Mutation live-action series, a spot that inevitably went to Venus. But this has never been officially verified by either Eastman or Laird. Here's what we know. Considering we don't yet have a definitive Kirby for any Turtle series after all these years, perhaps a fun way to both honor the character and allow it to keep true to canon once an official Kirby design ultimately presents itself. Why not release figures of all versions of that character? Many of the designs could utilize much of the same tooling, and it would be an exciting way to watch our toy turtle family grow. From an imagination perspective, even though they would each share the same name, they could all be from alternate realities with very different personalities. And holy shell, we just spelled out how to make a brand new toy line that we 100% would all be picking up, didn't we? Whoopsies. And yes, we would happily be involved in that line once NECA, Super 7, Playmates, or any of the above decided to make it. Well, shell, yeah, we're going to use our pulpit to be a little overt from time to time. Even Mr. Geeky has got to pay for all those toys somehow. Number 3, Panda Khan, aka Li Yang. For the younger generation watching this, nope, this is not Kung Fu Panda. Much like Usagi Yojimbo and Fugitoid, Panda Khan, also known as Li Yang, was a character from another independent comic series created by Dave Garcia and Monica Sharp, and recently purchased by Galestone Media, with a brand new animated series scheduled to release sometime in 2023. The character not only made its way into plastic via the original Playmates line, but crossed over with the Turtles while appearing in yet another comic, Equine the Uncivilized. Yet another character who might be fun to have in toy form someday. Wink, wink, but we digress. It was long rumored that Khan, much like Usagi, was another slated to make his way into the Fred Wolf cartoon series, but that ultimately never came to materialize. We often like to imagine what that could have looked like, because for us, at least while playing with our toys as kids, we saw both Usagi and Khan as unofficial members of the Mutanimals, acting as highly capable stand-ins for Dreadmon and Jagwar until those figures came, which of course, as we mentioned before, they didn't. But thanks to NECA, we know they'll be coming soon. In our minds, Khan was always one of the more fun hero toys from the TMNT Playmates line. Sure, we had characters like Half Court and Dr. L, which were incredibly cool in their own right, but if the Turtle Bros needed a capable brawler to have their back when the Foot Clan or an army of General Trags came at them in some of their epic Playmates wars, Khan was one they would always want by their side. And yes, we did mean to say an army of Trags. Army builders weren't so much a thing in toys back then. So if we wanted to pretend it was a horde of rock soldier infantrymen, a fleet of Trags was the closest we were going to get. Additionally, Khan seemed to fit seamlessly with everything the Turtles stood for. Honor, discipline, loyalty, courage. It majorly bums us out that he never made it into the animated series, because we know those episodes would have been amazingly fun to see. Bear with us for a moment as we break down what we think that could have looked like. Once again, Shredder is up to no good, and his scheme includes bringing in reinforcements from a reality filled with an army of feudal anthropomorphs, which, yes, potentially could have led to some additional Panda army building opportunities as well. He approaches Khan, who leads a clan of animal warriors, and mistakenly thinks Khan will help him against the Turtles. But once Khan meets them, he very quickly realizes He is on the wrong side and helps them to defeat Shredder and his goons along with some of Khan's own clan who have now sided with Shredder's plan. And yes, that could have provided even more opportunities for a new figure or two. While we have no way of knowing what the actual story of Khan's episode would have been, we have watched every episode of that series more times than was probably intended, and we like to think that formula is probably fairly close. We imagine Fred Wolf Panda Khan would have been fairly close in personality to Leonardo, perhaps too close. And that may have presented initial interaction issues while trying to lead the bros into combat. Once the two were able to resolve their issues and work together, they would have likely been fast friends. And it would have been fun to see Khan as an ally for Leonardo, who he could feel he could call on for help from time to time. Khan and Leonardo side by side, swords drawn and confidently taking the fight to the foot would have been a thing of beauty to watch. Number 2. Silver. Silver is definitely in our top 5 of mobbed up mutant yetis with amazing Dayglow suits that we want as action figures. Who are the other 4? Hey, forget about it. That's a lot of questions out of use. We could focus on the fact that his name and look imply he is not a yeti, but rather a silverback gorilla. But nope. We're going to leave that alone and just reiterate he is yet another awesome looking character that was introduced in the next Mutation series that might be worth a second look as a character ripe for consideration in the Fred Wolf style. We aren't going to quibble about how silly some of the characters from this iteration were, but again, as toy potential, this guy was misnamed. A more fitting one would have been Gold. A couple of things right off the bat with this deliciously neon mutant simian. First, he was incredibly capable. He was calculating and strategic, but much like so many other great thinkers of the early 90s like Shredder, the Brain, or Lord Zed, those around him often found a way to bungle his plans. If Silver were equipped with competent lackeys, he would have posed a fairly serious threat to the Turtles, and still very well could. Another important thing of note here is that it's incredibly nice to see a primary villain actually be another mutant for once. Yes, sure, we have Bebop and Rocksteady or Toka and Lazar, but those are henchmen. Here, Silver is the big bad of his encounters with the Turtles, and that is a bit of a breath of fresh sewer air. Because the Fred Wolf show was set in the 80s, we see Silver coming with a 1980s accurate, non-lethal, all-silver Tommy gun, a removable matching fedora, and a mutant buddy pack-in goon that is an actual tiny yeti, with a matching neon suit and one giant oversized foot named Tiny, because, you know, gotta appreciate a well-placed opportunity for a Bigfoot visual gag. Number 1. Savanti Romero. But geeky, this is a Mirage character. Considering NECA has now been pumping out stellar Mirage figures like Fugitoid, Utram Soldiers, and especially Renet, wouldn't it make more sense to have Renet's primary adversary in the Mirage line first? Well, of course we want Savanti in the Mirage form as well. But that shouldn't preclude this vastly overlooked major baddie from also appearing across the board. We view Savanti as a lesser-known Shredder. He is capable of some incredible damage. He just hasn't had the right opportunity to show us just how underutilized he has been yet. Savanti has been around since the early days. He was in Palladium. He's been in a handful of the video games. He was in the Mirage comics, IDW comics, the 2003 and 2012 series. So why is it that when folks bring up Savanti, we're often met with blank stares? Shouldn't his name be just as known as a character like Krang or Rat King or even Baxter Stockman? We realize that in each of the previously mentioned incarnations, his world domination plans fall flat and he is left defeated. But how is that different than Shredder's countless unsuccessful schemes? The primary difference between them, in our eyes, is that one bends time and space to his whim, and the other tries and fails to control a dim-witted Rhino and Warthog to often hilarious results. We're certainly not trying to knock Shredder because we can't get enough of that Fred Wolf era tin-plated baddie who just can't get it right. But what we're more trying to illustrate here is that Savanti wouldn't be too much of a stretch from what we already know and love of that series. So maybe it would be fun to change it up a bit and discover just how cool Savanti could be when given some interesting opportunities. Imagine a villain that is constantly messing up his vision of power, but has all of time and space to keep at it until eventually something sticks. Imagine infinite ways to mess with reality, and an unending army of new mutants under his command to go toe-to-toe with our favorite turtle brothers. Yeah. See where we're going with this? We envision Savanti coming with a time scepter, some attachable bone armor, a time portal to recreate him breaching time-space, and as a fun little Easter egg to the IDW series, in addition to his prehistoric ties, we'd also pack in a little buddy of Anchovy, the mutant velociraptor from the miniseries Bebop and Rocksteady Destroy Everything, also in Fred Wolf style, of course. And boom, we just got a twofer. SpeekyGeeky's TMNT Concept Design Poll. Since we're already talking about wholly new characters in plastic, we figured we would take a moment to ask you, the viewer, who you would like to see in one of our upcoming videos. We have been running polls on our YouTube community page, as well as our SpeekyGeeky Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit pages as to which original TMNT concept designs we might want to see as toys. Here are the options from our first 5 polls. So make sure to head over to any of our socials for the full list of option names and weigh in on your selections in the comments. And stay tuned because those winning options and others may just appear in another upcoming TMNT Deep Dive episode. There are also some incredibly talented TMNT customizers who are already creating some of those characters who appear on our polls. And it is a beautiful thing to see. Here are just a few of those absolutely creative folks that you're definitely going to want to follow, and make sure to keep an eye on their socials as well. Oh, one last thing. Sometimes we encounter a piece of fan creation that is just so incredibly cool, it stops us flat in our turtle tracks. And holy moly, did that just happen to us recently when we found fan-made Casey Jones animation from Tortugas Ninjas Argentina. Those folks are working on some truly amazing content over on their YouTube channel, including a fan-made Tournament Fighters style video game, and even some custom figures. So if you haven't yet checked them out, do yourself a favor and head over and give their videos some love. Tell them Geeky sent you. Well, there you have it. That concludes part 1 of our top hopes for the NECA Fred Wolf animated series of characters that have never been seen in that fashion yet. But don't stray too far from the sewer lair, because part 2 is right around the corner. So make sure to stay tuned to SpeekyGeeky's YouTube channel for more dedicated turtle time. We have no doubt that you have some characters that top your list as well. So be sure to make your hopes known and join the discussion in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to sub up, give the video a like, and share it with anyone you know who would appreciate these types of videos. Also, make sure to check out the description for some other links that lead to some expanded similar content we think you'll also probably enjoy quite a bit. We realize you could have gone anywhere and you chose to nerd out with us, and we appreciate that. So, as always, I am Mr. Geeky, and until we next expanded universe Fred Wolf Turtle Speaky, keep it geeky, folks.